Welcome back. In carrying out 10 strikes on suspected drug vessels that have killed more than 40 people, the Trump administration's blurred the line between enforcing the law and waging an all-out war. That's the argument made in this new analysis from the New York Times. The reporter behind it, Charlie Savage, joins me now. Charlie, thank you for being here. You write in this analysis, quote, every modern president has occasionally taken some aggressive policy step based on a stretched or disputed legal interpretation. But you argue that what President Trump's doing regarding these vessel strikes is different. Explain to the viewers why you think that is.
Well, that's right. That it's not anything new for a president to do something here or there to achieve a policy goal that relies on some creative lawyering that some people think is on the wall and some people think is off the wall. What's different about these boat attacks, beyond the gravity that we're talking about killing people, as opposed to forgiving student loans or even acts of war in a congressionally authorized conflict like counterterrorism drone strikes. Here we're talking about killing people unilaterally, is that the administration has not put forward a legal argument for why it can do this. It has asserted that President Trump has, quote, determined, unquote, that this is an armed conflict and therefore crews on these boats that are off the coast of South America and are alleged to be smuggling drugs can be treated as combatants. But that's a bald claim. There's a huge conceptual gulf between the criminal act of smuggling drugs, if that's indeed what each of these people was doing, and the kind of use of armed force, the direct attack on the United States, literal attack on the United States, that would be necessary for this to legitimately be an armed conflict in which you can kill people lawfully in response. And they've offered no explanation about how to bridge that gulf. And that's the difference between this and previous sort of edgy things that presidents occasionally have done. Just total indifference to the idea of justifying themselves.
Yeah, and what you've pointed out in your report and what we've reported here at CBS is that lawmakers are quite frustrated at the fact that when they ask for those legal justifications in the closed-door classified briefings, they're not getting one. Given that you are a reporter on and someone who's tracked presidential power, and there's been all this discussion since the beginning of Trump 2.0 about constitutional crises, where would this move to target these vessels maybe rank in terms of the discussion of constitutional crises? Is this a big one? Is this a contributing factor? Given that war is what's being talked about here, and it's something that Congress is supposed to be more directly involved in.
Yeah, well, this administration, by which I mean Trump 2, has been engaged in just a radical volume of executive power grabs. It's quite unlike anything we've seen before, including Trump 1. In the first Trump administration, certainly that was a wild time and there was plenty to write about, but there were a lot of traditional, very conservative, political appointed Republican lawyers in that administration and in other senior positions who were sort of keeping things within guardrails, relatively speaking. While they were out of power, the people who stuck with Trump after January 6th very consciously, and we wrote about this, they talked about it quite openly at the time during the campaign, thought that that was a mistake to allow people like that into the administration, that they had impeded Trump from doing everything he wanted to do, and that if they got back into power, they were going to recruit a different kind of lawyer, a different breed, a more MAGA-friendly. They denounced the conservative Federalist Society as squishes. And that is, in fact, what they have done. They've filled the second administration in a variety of ways that with both people and policies that quashed internal constraints and checks and balances within the executive branch, just are not there in a way they always were before, including the first Trump administration. And so this particular policy is very striking, no pun intended, because we're talking about, as I called it, the irreversible gravity of killing. This is not just, freezing a program that could be restored later or even tearing down a building that could be put back up later. These are people who are dead now. And so that can happen if there's a congressionally authorized armed conflict, if you're talking about combatants on a battlefield, but it's not supposed to happen when there's just a crime involved. In the same way, a police officer who thinks someone's dealing drugs on the street can't just pull out his gun and shoot the person dead. That would be murder. You
Right.
arrest the person. And forever, the U.S. Coast Guard has been interdicting boats like this and arresting their crews if the suspicions were accurate. So we're really in a very different place here.
Charlie Savage is the author of The Peril of a White House That Flaunts Its Indifference to the Law, which is available at NewYorkTimes.com. Charlie, thank you so much for joining us for a few minutes of conversation about it. It's an issue we'll all be tracking as this conflict continues. Thank you.